Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. The Bible tells one big story of redemption, and we want to spend 5 minutes every day journeying through the Bible from start to finish and exploring how all of it points to Jesus.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. My name is Alexa, and today we continue our study of the book of Psalms by looking at Psalms 71 through 75. Psalm 71 is written by an unnamed psalmist who is old in his age. The psalmist writes how he has spent his life knowing and praising the Lord. He says that God has instructed him since he was young, and he is a sign to others about the faithfulness of the Lord. In light of God's help throughout his life, he asks God to deliver and rescue him. And even in his troubles, the psalmist praises the Lord and knows that God will be faithful to him. Psalm 72 is a psalm written by Solomon, David's son. Solomon prays for God to make him a successful king. He asks that God will make him a just and righteous king who rules over the people of Israel fairly. Reflecting the God he serves, Solomon asks that he be a king who redeems and cares for the oppressed. Psalm 73 is written by a man named Asaph, who was a Levite appointed by David to sing in the temple. Asaph writes honestly how he envies the wicked because they don't have any troubles, and they always seem to prosper. Asaph is honest to God, and he asks him if his worship to the Lord is all for nothing. Yet as the psalm progresses, so does Asaph's understanding. He writes how coming into the temple and being in the presence of the Lord caused him to have clarity. It was then that he understood the wicked don't truly prosper, for their end is destruction. Asaph writes how even when he was bitter against God continued to hold his hand. All of this causes him to beautifully proclaim that even if his flesh fails, God is his strength and portion forever. In Psalm 74, Asaph writes in response to the destruction of Israel. This psalm most likely was penned in response to the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Asaph writes mournfully over the city and the temple being burned and how the people are in oppression. He calls for God to remember his covenant with Israel and to champion the cause of his people. Asaph praises God in Psalm 75 for being a great judge. The voice of God appears in this psalm, declaring how he judges fairly. By his power and righteousness, God humbles the unrighteous and he exalts the righteous. The unrighteous receive God's cup of wrath poured out on them. But as sinners, we all deserve to receive God's wrath. We are guilty because of our sin and deserve to be punished. Yet in God's grace, Jesus took the cup of wrath meant for us. On the cross, God's wrath was poured out upon Christ for our sake. As followers of Jesus, the salvation we have received saves us from a punishment of eternal separation from God and secures us a place with him forever. Because of the security of our salvation, we can walk through troubles in this life, knowing that this is not the end. Like Asaph in Psalm 73, when we walk through suffering, it is easy to think that our suffering is for nothing. We look at those who don't know Jesus and grow envious that they aren't facing trouble, but we are. Yet when we come to God's word, we learn that our suffering is not in vain, nor is it eternal. As followers of Jesus, the only suffering we will experience is on this side of eternity. Unlike those who don't know Christ, we will experience eternity devoid of suffering. Until that day, we have the sure promise that God is holding our hand in suffering. We can confidently say, "My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." Thanks so much for joining us today. Be sure to follow along with us on Instagram at Daily Grace Podcast and at The Daily Grace Co. And check out our website, thedailygraceco.com, for all kinds of resources to help you dive deeper into God's Word. On our website, you can find our Story of Redemption study that accompanies this podcast. And we even have Story of Redemption journals that have dedicated journaling space for every chapter of the Bible. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to talking with you tomorrow.